I am staring at a number that doesn't make sense. $1.4 billion. That S billion with a B. And I've spent the last 3 days trying to wrap my head around what the New York Times just uncovered about how much Donald Trump has made since returning to the White House just 1 year ago. $1.4 billion. And here's what's keeping me up at night. This isn't some conspiracy theory. This isn't speculation. The New York Times editorial board went through and calculated only the money they can actually account for, only the deals they can verify, only the cash flows they can document, and they still arrived at $1.4 billion in a single year. Let me put that in perspective for you. The New York Times points out that this amount equals over 16,000 times the median U.S. household income. 16,000 times. While millions of Americans are deciding between paying for groceries or their prescription medications, the man in the Oval Office has enriched himself by $1.4 billion using the power we temporarily gave him. And I think that number is actually low. I'll explain why in a moment, but first you need to understand how we got here. Look, I've been reading through over 1,200 comments from people trying to process this information, and what strikes me is that about 60% of you aren't even surprised. 60%. You are angry, you re-frustrated, you re-disgusted, but you re-not surprised. One person wrote something that really stuck with me. They said, most of America knew he was corrupt before he ran for president, and they voted for him anyway. And that is the thing that terrifies me most. Not that this is happening, but that we all saw it coming and somehow it's still happening anyway. Now, the other 40% of comments, you are asking the question that keeps echoing in my head. How is this legal? How is he getting away with this? Where is Congress? Where is the Department of Justice? Where are the checks and balances we were promised? And here's my honest answer. I don't know. I've been trying to figure that out myself, and the best explanation I can come up with is that the system was never designed to handle someone who simply doesn't care about the rules. Someone who sees the presidency not as public service, but as the ultimate business opportunity. Let me break down where this $1.4 billion is coming from, because the details are somehow even more disturbing than the total. $23 million from Trump licensing his name overseas since his re-election. Just his name. And here's the problem with that. Every single one of those licensing deals requires approval from foreign governments. So you have the President of the United States conducting foreign policy while simultaneously negotiating which foreign governments will approve licenses that personally enrich him. How is that not a conflict of interest? How is that not corruption in its purest form? Then you have Amazon paying $28 million for a documentary about Melania Trump. Now, I don't know about you, but that seems like an awful lot of money for a documentary, especially when you consider that Amazon had major antitrust issues pending before the Trump administration at the exact same time. And oh, by the way, Amazon's owner, Jeff Bezos, also wants government approval for his space ventures. I am not saying there is a direct quid pro quo here. I can prove that. But I am saying the pattern is impossible to ignore. Major tech and media companies have paid $90.5 million to Trump in settlements. $90.5 million. CBS settled that ridiculous lawsuit over editing a 60 Minutes interview, something every news organization does with every interview, and they paid up. Why? Because they needed FCC approval for their $8 billion merger with Skydance. And Trump gave them that approval right after they paid him $90 million personally. Do you see the pattern here? I am not making wild accusations. I am just following the money and asking you to look at what's right in front of us. And then there's Qatar. The country of Qatar gave Trump a $400 million jet. Not $40 million, $400 million. The president admits he plans to take this jet after leaving the White House. He says it'll be for his presidential library. Who knows what he'll actually do with it? But he is taking a $400 million gift from a foreign government while serving as president. When Jimmy Carter was president, he had to sell his peanut farm because of potential conflicts of interest. A peanut farm. And now we have a president accepting a $400 million private jet from a foreign government, and somehow that's just fine? But here's where it gets really disturbing. The largest sum, according to the New York Times, is $867 million from cryptocurrency. $867 million. And I need you to understand why this is so problematic. Cryptocurrency, by its very nature, has very little transparency. It's designed that way. And Trump has his own cryptocurrency. So corporations, wealthy individuals, even foreign countries know that the way to curry favor with Trump is through his cryptocurrency. It's a perfect vehicle for what amounts to legalized bribery. The United Arab Emirates investment firm announced plans to deposit $2 billion into a Trump cryptocurrency firm. $2 billion. And what happened on the other side of that deal? According to the New York Times, the UAE received access to advanced chips which they were previously denied because of their relationship with China. And Trump also pardoned somebody who was convicted of fraud. I am connecting these dots. You can decide if I am seeing patterns that aren't there or if this is exactly what it looks like. And here's what about 40% of the comments pointed out that I think is crucial. This is only year one. This is just the money we can account for in the first year of his second term. What about the inauguration committee that raised hundreds of millions from corporations seeking favors? What about the club his son started in D.C. that sells access? What about the Venezuela oil money that Trump openly says he plans to deposit in a Qatari bank so he can personally control who receives it? None of that is included in the $1.4 billion. None of it. Several of you mentioned that Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner took what some estimate as $1 trillion in 2020 when they printed $3 trillion for COVID relief. I can verify that exact number, but multiple credible reports indicate massive financial dealings during that time that have never been fully investigated. And then there's the stock market manipulation that several commenters brought up. Every time Trump makes an announcement, every time he tweets about tariffs or trade deals, the market moves. Do you think his family and his cronies aren't profiting from insider information? Do you think they are not making trades based on what they know is coming before the public finds out? One commenter wrote, Don T tell me that his family and his cronies Don T profit with insider trade. And I think that's exactly right. I think that's happening constantly, and we have no way to track it because cryptocurrency and offshore accounts make it nearly impossible to follow the money trail. Now, let me address the strongest counter-argument I have seen in the comments because about 15% of you are pushing back on this, and I want to engage with that seriously. Some of you are saying, he's a billionaire. He turned down his presidential salary. Why would he need to steal money? And look, I understand that argument. On the surface, it doesn't make logical sense that someone worth billions would risk his reputation for more money. But here's what I think you are missing. This isn't about need. This has never been about need. This is about what Trump has done his entire life. He is a deal maker. He is a businessman. And from his perspective, why wouldn't he use the most powerful position in the world to enrich himself further? The presidential salary is $400,000 a year. He is making $1.4 billion by leveraging presidential power. Turning down $400,000 while making $1.4 billion is not evidence of virtue. It is a rounding error. It is a PR move that costs him nothing while he rakes in billions. And several of you pointed out another pattern I think is significant. Whatever Trump accused Biden of doing, that's what Trump is actually doing. He screamed about Biden family corruption for years. And now we rewatching the Trump family engage in corruption that makes anything alleged about the Bidens look like stealing cookies from a Girl Scout troop. I read one comment that said the convicted felon Trump-esque grift out of the White House makes the corruption in Minnesota look like a bunch of Girl Scouts stealing cookies. And I think that captures it perfectly. We re-operating on a scale of corruption that is hard for most Americans to even conceptualize. Now here is what really gets me, what keeps me up at night. While Trump is making $1.4 billion, he has allowed tax credit subsidies for healthcare to expire. He has cut Medicaid access while people are dealing with life and death illnesses. He has done nothing, not one thing, to help the household incomes of average Americans. In fact, he has done the exact opposite. His policies have hurt the economic interests of the very people who voted for him. And I know some of you are thinking, well, gas is cheaper. One commenter said their MAGA friend doesn't he care about any of this because gas prices are down. And I get it. When you struggling to make ends meet, when you living paycheck to paycheck, lower gas prices feel significant. They are significant. But I need you to understand what's happening here. You are being given a small discount at the pump while the man you put in power is stealing billions of dollars. He is dismantling healthcare. He is gutting programs that help working families. He is giving tax breaks to oligarchs while you worried about affording groceries. That is not making America great. That is not draining the swamp. That is the biggest con in American political history playing out in real time while half the country cheers because gas is $2.50 instead of $3. Several commenters pointed out that Trump considers himself an oligarch, and I think that exactly right. He doesn't see himself as a public servant. He sees himself as part of an elite class that deserves to extract wealth from the system. The fact that oligarchs receive tax credits and don't pay their fair share doesn't bother him because he is an oligarch. And when you view his presidency through that lens, everything makes sense. The policies, the corruption, the blatant conflicts of interest, he is not even trying to hide it anymore. He is doing it out in the open because the Supreme Court told him he is above the law, and he believes them. I watched that clip of the Australian journalist questioning Trump about his business activities while in office. And Trump's response was to threaten Australia, not to answer the question, not to explain how this could possibly be appropriate. He threatened an entire allied country because one journalist had the audacity to ask him about corruption. That's who we are dealing with. Someone who views accountability as an attack. Someone who sees transparency as betrayal. Someone who will use the power of the presidency to punish anyone who questions him. And here's what I found in the comments that I think is most important. About 20% of you are saying this is illegal. He needs to be impeached. He needs to be in prison. And I agree with you. I think what's happening is illegal. I think it violates the emoluments clause. I think it constitutes fraud on a massive scale. But another 30% of you are saying nothing is going to happen. Nobody's going to hold him accountable. We've been here before. And I'm afraid you might be right too, because we are watching a stress test of American democracy in real time. We are finding out what happens when someone in power simply refuses to follow the rules and the institutions designed to enforce those rules either want to act or can act. One commenter wrote, "I hate how everyone says this guy is doing all of this and they do nothing about it. No one will. They'll draw a line in the sand and he will jump over it and laugh and they'll draw another. This is a nation of cowards and poorly educated, lazy fools." Now, I don't think Americans are cowards or fools. I think we are exhausted. I think we've been fighting this fight for so long that many people have given up hope that accountability is even possible anymore. And I understand that exhaustion. I feel it too. But here's what I believe. I could be wrong about this. Maybe I'm naive, but I still believe that this information matters. I believe that documenting this corruption matters. I believe that the New York Times doing this investigation matters even if it doesn't lead to immediate consequences. Because democracy doesn't die all at once. It dies slowly, one compromise at a time, one norm violation at a time, one instance of corruption that goes unchallenged at a time. And every time we document what's happening, every time we refuse to normalize it, every time we say out loud, this is not okay, we refighting that slow death. Several international commenters pointed out that America is losing credibility around the world, that we are viewed as corrupt, as criminal, as no different than the authoritarian regimes we used to criticize. And that breaks my heart because I still believe in what America is supposed to stand for. But I also know that belief isn't enough. Faith isn't enough. Hope isn't enough. We need action. And I know that sounds overwhelming when you one person trying to figure out how to fight a system that seems completely broken. So let me give you some concrete things you can do. First, talk about this. Share this information. Don't let people pretend this is normal. When your MAGA uncle says Trump is fighting corruption, show him these numbers. Show him $1.4 billion in 1 year. Make him explain how that is fighting corruption. Second, pressure your representatives. I don't care if they read Democrats or Republicans. Call them, email them, show up at their town halls, demand investigations, demand oversight, demand accountability. Most of them won't act, but some might, and the more pressure they feel, the harder it becomes for them to ignore. Third, document everything. Screenshot articles, save receipts, build a record. Because when this is over, when Trump eventually leaves office, we need that documentation to pursue legal action. We need it to seize the assets he has stolen. We need it to ensure this never happens again. And fourth, vote. I know some of you think voting doesn't matter anymore. I know some of you think the system is too rigged, but they are counting on you to give up. They were counting on you to be too exhausted to fight back. To give them that satisfaction. The midterm elections are coming. Every single House seat is up. A third of Senate seats are up. Vote in every election. Primary, general, local, state, federal, vote. Like your democracy depends on it because it does. I'm going to be honest with you about something. When I started researching this, when I started reading through your comments, I felt hopeless. I felt like we were watching a slow-motion car crash and there's nothing we can do to stop it. But then I read some comments that gave me hope. Comments from people who are organizing in their communities, comments from people who are running for local office, comments from people who are refusing to give up even when it feels impossible. One person wrote, "America, fight Trump like Ukraine is fighting Putin. Your existence as a democracy totally depends on it." And I think they rewrite. This is an existential fight for what America is going to be. Are we going to be a country where the president can openly enrich himself while millions of Americans struggle? Are we going to be a country where corruption is just accepted as the price of doing business? Are we going to be a country where accountability is optional for the powerful? Or are we going to be a country that still believes in the rule of law, that still believes in equal justice, that still believes the presidency is about public service, not personal profit? I don't know the answer to that question yet. I wish I did. What I do know is that $1.4 billion in 1 year is not normal. It's not acceptable. And it's not something we should ever stop being outraged about. The New York Times did their job by investigating and reporting this. Now we need to do ours by making sure this information doesn't just disappear into the 24-hour news cycle, by making sure people understand the scale of what is happening, by making sure there are consequences. And if there aren't consequences now, then we build the case for consequences later. Every dollar Trump steals, every conflict of interest, every act of corruption gets documented and added to the pile of evidence that will be waiting for him when he no longer has presidential immunity. Because here's what I am absolutely certain about. Trump want to be president forever, he can TB. And when he when he just a private citizen again, all of this comes due. The lawsuits, the investigations, the criminal charges, all of it. Some of you are saying he'll flee the country, that he'll go to Qatar or Dubai or Russia to avoid accountability, and maybe you were right. Maybe that's exactly what he'll do. But even if he does, even if he gets away, we still have to fight. We still have to document the corruption. We still have to demand better, because the fight isn't just about Trump. It's about what kind of country we're going to be after Trump. I want to end with this. The reason I spent 3 days on this, the reason I am talking about it now, is because I refuse to accept that this is just how things are. I refuse to normalize corruption on this scale. I refuse to shrug and say, well, politicians are all corrupt anyway. No, they are not all corrupt on this level. They were not all making $1.4 billion in 1 year by selling access to the presidency. This is different. This is worse. And pretending otherwise is how we lose. So yes, I am angry. Yes, I am frustrated. Yes, sometimes I feel hopeless about whether anything will ever change, but I am not giving up, and I hope you want to either. Because the alternative is accepting that America is for sale to the highest bidder, and I'm not ready to accept that. Not yet. Maybe not ever. $1.4 billion. Remember that number. Share that number. Make people understand what it means, and then get to work. Because democracy